What's going on, everybody? It's episode 5 on my X. The guys are back in town. We got Hunter JJX, Justin Joseph. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. A little tired today. It's been a long freaking week, but glad to be here. Stoked that we've made it to 5 episodes already. Let's do this.
Absolutely, man. It was a long week for me too, but NFL starts this week, so I just got to make it to Thursday, and I'll be just fine. Also, not to take the limelight away, we got Faisal Khan in the house as well. It's going to be goofy. Goofy, you've had a good week. I can see that.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun weekend. We'll get more into it as the show goes on, but excited to do episode 5. You're talking about football starting up. I have a whole bunch of friends doing a bunch of fantasy drafts and stuff today, so I know you're doing some fantasies as well, Wes. But I just got done watching the Lakers Rockets game 2.
Let's go.
Crazy game. Lakers tying up the series. We got some good series all around. Clippers and Nuggets 1-1, Lakers Rockets 1-1. So basketball is exciting, Halo is exciting, and now we're doing All My Egg. So I'm excited.
Yeah, speaking of Halo being exciting, we had a ton go on this week, everybody. We had the G Fuel Open Tournament. Hunter, you actually competed in that, and I know your team did pretty well. I didn't get to catch the whole thing, but I'm gonna let you just touch on it for a second and let us know what that experience was like.
Yeah, it was fun, man. I mean, I kind of felt like I needed to get tagged in, I feel like being outside the ring is just, as a competitor, I feel like I'll always have that itch, and this was one of those times where I was like, there's no harm in jumping in and seeing what happens. So the G Field tournaments, basically it's like 3 weeks of qualifiers, and they take the top 2 teams from every week and they put them in a finals bracket at the end for some money. And so, I threw together a ragtag bunch of Spartans, and jumped in to see what would happen. We ended up, closing the thing out. We finished second, so qualifying for the finals. We pushed, Ryan Newman Spartan and Magnanimous to, a game 3. It was 3-game series, so we played pretty well for a bunch of guys just jumping in and playing. So it was a fun week. I mean, but Faisal over here, saw him get real involved, stepping away from the caster desk for a second to remind folks what he does in Halo 3. Faisal, you played in the Open Tournament this weekend, man. How did that happen? What happened? Give us the rundown, bro.
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie. It was a tough decision for me to compete in the Open Tournament this last weekend. And obviously my team, we actually won the whole tournament. So overall, overall very exciting. And just like you said, just being a competitor, going back to, and for me, like Halo 3, I know for you, Justin, Halo 2 was that game that you fell in love with the Halo. For me, like I've said time and time again, Halo 3 was that game for me. In 2019, just exactly 1 year ago, this weekend. So me and Gilkey were just talking about it. Exactly 1 year ago, we were in Atlantic City and we won that, that LAN Halo 3 tournament. And so it hasn't been that long for me to kind of be competing at a high level, especially for Halo 3. So when these guys came up to me, Kevin or Eco, Trippy and Gilkey, and they pretty much were trying to convince me to play with them and do this thing. And my initial answer was, hey, I really want to do it, but I can't because I'm commentating the Pro Series. But after considering it again and kind of sleeping on it, I felt that itch, and I really needed to scratch it, if that makes sense. And with Halo 3 being that nostalgia, where feeling where it is right now, it felt like the right decision. And the only downside the main downside is obviously now that we won the tournament going into the next weekend, obviously I'm going to be competing in the tournament, so I will not be able to commentate the next Pro Series for Halo 3. So I will miss all you guys on the desk, but hopefully, you guys maybe we could do an interview or something on the show, and I'll try to stay involved. But yeah, overall it was a fun day of Halo, and my team ended up winning the whole thing. So very exciting.
Yeah, we'll have to see if you make it far in that or not. The jury's still out on that one.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you a hard time. 100% Faisal, understand the dog's got to scratch the itch, right? So, man, am I jealous of you getting an opportunity to be able to compete in something like that, because it comes, man. I tell you, every time I go to a Halo tournament, every time I'm standing in a commentary booth, every time I'm on the desk, there's a time at every tournament where I'm like, man, I just want to compete again. And I think that's the competitive spirit in you, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. So get it while you can, because when you become, I guess, an official caster and whatnot, it's so difficult to kind of like weigh that, especially in a game like Halo 3 that we know both of us have a lot of history and a lot of love for.
Let's be honest, Wes. You're just giving people a chance, right? Like you're giving other people a chance to shine.
But I'm saying I would be a legitimate threat to everyone involved if I wanted to. Of course, I have to say that because I'm clutch and I have an ego. I'll fucking play. Anyways, we also had another Halo 5 tournament this week. Esports Arena throws Halo 5 tournaments every Sunday. If you want to be a part of them, you want to sign up, you want to put some guys together and go at it. We actually have a 4-peater in the house. It's Fung 4 going for the 4th time in a row. And we're like, what kind of quality opponents are they playing against? They played against, first off, I'll break down who Fung 4 is. Fung 4 is it's Renegade, Talik, Soul Snipe, and Druck, right? And those guys have 4-peated and done so very convincingly. They ran into a pretty serious squad this weekend, went to the last game in the grand finals. The bracket actually got reset. You really had to wonder. They went down 1-0 after the bracket reset, and they came back and swept the 2-1 series of the best of 3 in the finals. And they showed some resiliency there. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. But the team they went up against was Saiyan, Bound, Super CC, and I'm gonna forget somebody. Super CC and Saiyan, Bound. I can't recall it. Whatever. They got second. And that is just let that be a little lesson for everybody. Nobody remembers second place. So you need
Wes,
to get
why don't you tell the people what the second place team's name was?
They went as final boss, and that was kind of.
Oh my god!
If you go as final boss and you lose, that's not good luck. Let me be the first one to tell you. Y'all start rocking Bleed the Hype in tournaments.
Oh, it was Arctic.
Yeah. Arctic is actually pretty good too, which is fortunate. But the great finals. But when you go as final boss, you got to win. That's like a team going as Bleed the Hype.
First of all, you can't even go as final boss. There's no going as final boss and winning. You can't. You can't go as final boss if you're not Ogre 2 or Walshy or somebody like.
Maybe even Strongstyle can get away with it. But
come on now.
If you weren't on final boss, like let alone like didn't win a tournament as like if you were never on a final boss roster, I just think that's kind of. I don't know, man. That's always bugged me when people try to do it.
Yeah, I saw that actually, and I saw the Tina as final boss, and I mean, for me, I just played it off as like, it's just like a joke, whatever, which I'm sure it was. But
we learn lessons in life, and lesson number 1: don't try and steal one of the most prolific teams in all of esports.
The most,
just
the most.
And ACS tweeted it too. It was funny. It was like final boss versus. I was like, hold on, who's final boss?
Yeah. It's like I thought Ogre 2 broke out the sticks again or something.
Yeah, it's straight up. That's what I thought when I saw HCS official Twitter tweet final boss versus. I was like, wait, and then it wasn't them. So
it wasn't them, and they didn't play like final boss either. And
yeah.
4 ends up winning, like I said, another 4-peat. So big shout out to them. Hoping you see some more competition in those things. And hopefully someone's able to take down Renegade because his ego is growing by the week.
Well, let's jump into the official actual recap of the Pro Series Open tournament that just happened. So Faisal, why don't you walk us through the results?
Yeah, so guys, like we mentioned, this past Saturday was the MCC Halo 3 Pro Series Open Tournament, the second one. Last week, or a couple weekends ago, we saw All Natural, which is St. Lee and friends win. And this time around, let's go down the series results right here. First place was The Last Dance, which is yours truly. The roster consisted of myself, Gilkey, Eco, and Trippy. Second place runner-ups were Crowd Pleasers, so shout out to these guys, bouncing back after not doing as well or not making it out of the pools in the pro series last weekend, showing resilience and coming back around this time to give themselves another shot. Third place Roaches, fourth place the Erectors, and 5th through 8 right there, GM, Warzy, One Trick Pony, and Infinite FR. So I'll just again give one more time a summary of kind of what the feeling of the tournament was, and some of the teams that deserve a shout out here. And I know all of us are going to touch on it, but for me, I touched on it a little bit already with crowd pleasers. These guys are definitely, solid competition throughout any Halo. I feel like we saw them have so much success in Halo 5 when it comes to Kratos and Suspector. And Straight Sig commonly is a X Games gold medalist, and Straight Sig is, FFA champion, has been around the scene for so long. So those guys always going to be a problem. And another team that I really wanted to give a shout out to that actually, in my opinion, gave us the toughest competition. One of two teams that gave us the toughest competition was Catastrophe's team. So these guys are, the Halo 3, online Halo 3 kids, Catastrophe, Talonol, Deciding, and Flazin.
Yeah.
Yes,
Flazin.
yeah, Flazin. And, those guys are so nasty, individually skilled. And even after the tournament was over, Flazin came in my chat and, he was saying good games and was just pretty much kind of picking my brain on what separates, the top of the top from players that have the skill, and really looking for some insightful information, which I found genuine, and I found refreshing that after a tough loss in the tournament that I'm sure they wanted to win, going into the stream and kind of having that dialogue with me was cool. And yeah, I'll pass it to you guys. But yeah, it was a fun day of Halo. I got to dust off the sticks again, and our team was the last dance. And that's kind of like a play on it. I know where I want, I want to continue commentating, and I want to continue down this direction of making content. But an opportunity with teaming with players like Gilkey and Trippy and Eco, I had to take it. So it was a fun day, and I'm happy we got first.
I mean, if the team name is The Last Dance, I need to know who's Michael.
Oh, we'll leave that up to speculation.
I was about to say, I thought something witty about himself was about to come out of his mouth real quick.
We'll leave that up to you guys.
So we want to know in the comments, who is what role? Who's the Pippin of The Last Dance? Who is playing?
I'm going to be pissed. Someone's going to call me Steve Kerr or something. I'm going to be so mad.
Just take Rodman.
Yeah, right. Just take Rodman. That's the one you want to hear. Yeah,
I'll take Rodman. Hey, I'll be Rodman. All right.
Respectable.
He gets it done, but has to go out and have his fun times on the side. Yeah, this weekend it was fun. When I saw that Goof, Faisal, you were playing, obviously I was stoked. I had to tune in and support you guys. But I also too got to give a special shout out to the Erectors, Catastrophe, and friends. I'm a fan, like I have been. It's really funny. Like Tylenol, I think his whole chat thinks that I hate him. Because every time I play them, I just rage because A, they're so good, and B, they're always on East US just flying around and I can't do anything. But I respect them, man. I respect the fact that those dudes have stayed like a core group of friends for a while. The fact that they sat out of the first Open Cup because they wanted to wait for Flazin to get a PC to be able to play with their guys was cool. It says a lot about them. And so to see them jump in and get top 4 and qualify for next weekend, I'm excited for that they got to have that experience together, and to see how they grow from that will be cool. So looking to see them do some big things. I know they're planning on scrimming and practicing this weekend ready for the tournament, so I had to give them a special shout out. Now on to my main 2 takeaways from these Open Series results. My first one is, I think the international Halo scene really showed up this event. Out of those 8 qualifying teams, you see 2 of them are teams from overseas, with Infinite FR and with Roaches. I caught one of Roaches' series early on. Their first round, they played against Frosty the Truth, Alumni, Hoax Factor, and Name, and they went to like a game 5 nail biter series, just their first round. They were able to pull through that, and from there on out, they were just guns blazing, balls to the wall. They were able to torch their way all the way into the top 4. So I got to give a shout out to Roaches, and obviously Infinite FR, some of the best French players. I think SLG is on that team. Go ahead, Faisal.
Before you get into Infinite FR, I wanted to also point out that Roaches actually took crowd pleasers to game 5 for a spot in the finals. So not only did they make it all the way to top 4, they were 1 game away from making it to the grand final. So
does that say more about Roaches, or does that say more about crowd pleasers?
Ooh, for me, it says that's a good point. But I think for what we're talking about, I'm gonna give that more so kind of a nod to Roaches there, that they were able to playing against a team that they beat earlier in the tournament, Name and friends. That's definitely a solid roster. So playing them early, making it all the way to top 4, then almost making their grand finals, they were definitely having a good day. So props to them.
Yeah, and with the pings that they're probably playing on, that was no easy task to basically have to go to game 5 every series, or whatever. So shout out to them for pulling that out. And like I said, Infinite as well. SLG I know is on that team. He's a nasty player as well. So that was the first thing. My first takeaway was like, cool. Like, I love to see the international Halo scene show up and show out, because for so long they were just talked down on and kind of have felt overlooked. So I love to see them perform. The second takeaway that I had from this Open Cup is like, my God, the amateur scene like just continues to let me down with their business dealings in their team changes. I saw literally people shading one another and making roster changes like the night before, the morning of the tournament. I don't understand how these same groups of players expect to ever compete against the best players in the world when they can't even stick together for more than 24 hours to try to build any sort of chemistry. It's like they're hoping for this magical combination that's going to work out. And literally, I didn't see one single one of those teams that were doing those types of things qualify. It was a joke. I know you wanted to say something, Wes.
Yeah, it's nothing new. It's the same.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the amateur scene.
it's the amateur mindset, right? Like, point your finger at someone else and try and shade someone out of the spot that you probably shouldn't have. And that's just what some Halo has always been. Some people and some like small cliques will always turn into. I don't think that's like. And I'm not here to like try and bash on that or whatever. Do you make your own decisions, but you want to be successful. You want to cook a good, like, you want to make a good pizza. Put the right ingredients in it. You want to like the worst pizza you've ever had. Then like put some unsuccessful ingredients in there and see what you get. Right?
That pizza analogy was just, I like where you were trying to go with the pizza.
You want to bake a cake, then like get on.
Oh my God, bro.
It's anything, right?
I know what you're saying though, yeah.
It's just like it can be anything in life. Like you need a good recipe to come out with a good meal, and if you have a bad recipe, then don't expect a successful outcome. I think that's just a lesson that some people need to learn and may never learn. But I don't know the specifics behind any details that happen. I just know that like hearing those words coming from you, Justin, it's just like not surprising.
Yeah.
Nor is it interesting, because those players will probably never advance to the point where they want to, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I'm glad to be kind of out of that melting pot, I guess. We've seen some people really figure it out and crack the code. Players like Chris Common come to mind, where he was kind of in that amateur scene for a while and then started realizing, hey, like, I need to get with core groups of guys that are willing to stick it out. And we've seen the success that he's had kind of choosing that model, And I feel like you said it right, Wes. Like, there's always people, some folks are just never going to figure it out and never going to get it and understand that, hey, in order to succeed, you have to be able to work at it. Go ahead, Faisal.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of, I understand both sides of it. So it's easy and this is me just more so being devil's advocate, but it's easy for us to look at pro teams and say, oh, they're pro teams because they stick together and that's why they're successful. But at the same time, like, these amateur players don't have the success, so it's hard for them to stick together, right? So even these pro teams, they weren't bad when they formed, and then they had to work so hard to become good, right? They kind of come together, they play well, and then they build on that. So for these amateur teams, and all of us have been there. I mean, speaking for myself, like, back in 2009 when I was really coming up in Halo 3, I was playing through the amateur bracket, and I was an amateur player, and I'm guilty of that too, where you're on a team, but you kind of got a better offer, so you gotta really take it to hope that you advance in your career that way, or your Halo status, or whatever you want to call it. So I get, I don't agree with the shading. I think what's very important is communication, and what really aggravates me like none other is being shady to people that you consider friends. In Halo, we make teammates, they become our friends. We talk to these people every day. At the end of the day, if you got to do something as one of four, if a team consists of 4 members, if one of those players thinks they have a better opportunity to go to do something elsewhere, just be honest and be open with communication and let your players know. If they're upset, that's fine, but at least you did your part and respectfully, maturely told them, rather than it turning into some sort of disaster. So I think the only I do have pushback on how it's handled in ways that it's like immature, or shady. Other than that, I kind of understand when amateur players have to make changes and kind of do what's best for them to come up.
There's two things. Faisal, you used to be shady as hell.
Did I?
I'm not going to tell it. I have a specific story that I will not tell without your permission. But I remember being like, yo, low-key, that was kind of messed up. I remember it. I will never forget it. And it didn't even involve me. I remember, we'll talk about it and see if we want to bring that up on next week's show. But that being said, to Faisal's point, absolutely. I'm not sitting here saying if you're an amateur and you have a better opportunity somewhere, you don't take it because it will make you look shady. That's not what we're saying. It's how you go about it. It's team changes the day of the tournament. That's kind of messed up, right? Unless you're getting a significant upgrade, like you kind of committed, like especially if you guys have put time into this, like you kind of committed this with these people. Like I've been dropped 11 days before a tournament and left to find a team like as a professional player. That was a terrible feeling, like knowing that you already have like everything booked, you've already put in time, whatever, and you have to like literally figure it out. That's just an unprofessional like occurrence that happens, and we need to limit things like that from happening. But by all means, I think it's about how people can go about their team changes and how people can go about their opportunities. It's not saying that like if things aren't working out, like obviously a team change is probably necessary, but how you go about it and like the time that you allow that player the opportunity to also have the potential to compete and whatnot, like I think that that's important, and I think that that's something that we can improve on in the future.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's trying to say like don't take better offers. It's just the way you do it's huge. You guys nailed that. And I think also too, like so many of these moves from my perspective are just lateral. Like it's not like a clear cut, oh my gosh, this is such a better offer. It's just like, oh, I'm feeling these people. I'm feeling these people. I'm feeling these people. Oh, I played matchmaking 2 games with these guys and we were so good. You know what I mean? Like these like lateral, just side to side changes that just don't go anywhere. And I think, like I said, from what I was looking at and what I saw online, not one single one of those like those hot teams even qualified. So it just comes to show. And when you look at the teams that did qualify, I mean, it's veterans, it's people who have stuck together. Think about how long some of these international teams have been playing together, these players, you know, and really working stuff out. So we saw that. I don't know. You guys feeling good to jump into this week's main course or what?
Well, I'd like to give my thoughts on the Open.
Oh, go ahead. Well. Go ahead. I'll throw it back up on the screen for you too.
I appreciate that. I don't have too much to really talk about. I'm kind of excited to have these teams get the opportunity to be thrown in the pools of the top 8 teams that we currently have and have them duke it out. And I think my thoughts will kind of be reciprocated there. But the Last Dance, I mean, I'm not going to gas Faisal up just because I'm not one to gas someone up in front of them. But I legitimately think that they have a real opportunity to win the entire thing. I expect to see them advance very far into the bracket, if not win. That being said, I don't think that they're going to be favorites, quote unquote, against the likes of Tox if they compete, Inconceivable, or a couple of the other top teams that are out there. But I would put their names in that hat. Another note. I think the Erectors can create some upsets. Crowd Pleasers, you got to show me more in Halo 3. I think you were a great H2A team. I think that y'all were very solid, and I expected to see y'all go very far in H2A. I would expect y'all to be a good Halo 5 team. Halo 3, I'm not sure if this is your cup of tea, but when I watch y'all play, it doesn't seem like y'all play at the right pace and that you actually understand the right plays at all times. But, hey, there's a week. You got practice under your belt. Hopefully you put in some time and you can surprise us and come out of group plays this time around, because there's a lot of individual skill on that team, and those guys can click heads. Now let's see if they can do it when it comes tournament time in Halo 3. Other than that, nobody really sticks out. I'm kind of like, it's kind of a lackluster group, I would say, coming out of the AM bracket, other than like a couple of teams, right? I think there's like 3 or 4 teams that I could see creating some upsets, but other than that, I think the AM teams last week were like brought more of a show to potentially upset the top 8 teams, if that makes sense.
We saw that they stayed in pro because they put on such a show.
Yeah,
right?
I
So
think
we're
that's
not
a big
seeing
part
them.
of it is that it's the amateur teams that went through the first pro series where they played so well that they didn't play in this one because they qualified, right? So
Exactly.
I think it kind of filtered out a little bit. So because I do agree with your point, kind of looking at the players in the list right there. You don't, I wouldn't. I mean, I could see a couple of those teams making it into the pools. But yeah, I mean, that's really, it has to be a big accomplishment or even like a upset for any of these teams to make it into pool. So I feel like our expectation should more so be like, oh, congratulatory that they made it top 8. And now like, hopefully you can make it into the top 8 in pro bracket, right? It shouldn't really be expected necessarily, but it should be something that we're hoping to see them do.
But I will say that gives a lot of opportunity to the teams that did clinch their top 8 spots last week to not only repeat their performances from last week's, to maybe capitalize and jump and get a step further. Like I'm looking at St. Louis' team to really make a run and to potentially get like a top 4 performance. Wouldn't that be something special for them to and Status Quo, I see them on playing every day. Those guys are going to bring some heat. Those guys are going to be a serious problem for any team that they face, really. They're going to
BTH.
Yeah, BTH. I mean, like, there's some teams out there that I really think that are slept on that really have the potential to win, and I think that we're getting that Halo 3 towards the end of Halo 3 vibe, where there was a lot of teams that can win. It's just a matter of who's playing well that day and who's going to make the plays in order to do so. So I'm super excited for the Pro Series next week. I hope you guys are too. And now, Justin,
I'm excited. Oh, I'm ready.
Take us to it in a second.
Yeah. We're gonna jump into our main course this week. We have a fun topic for you. Hey, really quick side note, Wes. Just back just a tiny bit off your mic, just a little bit. You sound great. It's just a little muffled. This week, the topic that was picked, we're gonna jump into the top 5 MLG Halo 3 pro players. So the way this worked out was I had Wes and I had Faisal both text me their top 5 lists numbered 5 to 1. I did the same, and then I tallied up the points. So these guys don't know the way the list landed up. I'm the only one that kind of knows, and we're going to jump into it, and then we're going to give our thoughts on, where the players landed and whether or not we agree or disagree. So you guys ready to jump in with number 5?
Absolutely. I hope you guys didn't mess this list up.
Yeah, same.
All right, so coming in at number 5, we have Hysteria. So Wes, I want you to go first. Do you agree with him being number 5? Where was he on your list? Give me the full rundown on Hysteria as a Halo 3 player.
I think Hysteria was number 4 on my list. Definitely deserves a top 5 in my eyes. It would be easier to put him higher on the list if he had a better team in 2010, and I'm going to be nice with that statement. But I really do think that from my personal experience, dude, Hysteria was one of the biggest thorns in my side my entire Halo 3 career. It seemed like he never had an off game. When you watch a screen, he's not only unbelievably individually talented, like the guy would pop off with snipe, the guy did not miss shots, but the efficiency and the way he played Halo 3 was unbelievable. Like, he plays his life. He plays, if not the most objective, if not the second most objective on his team, and every team he was ever a part of. He keeps up with slaying with the best. The guy can do it all, and because of that, I really think that he deserves a spot in the top 5 all time.
Go ahead, Faisal, what do you think?
So Hysteria actually was on the cusp of being on my list. It's so hard to make a top 5 like OG MLG Halo 3 players list, because they're you break it up into 3 years and you try to think about it in your head, like over the course of 2008, 2009, 2010, which player had the most success, and obviously you can run down each tournament and really pull out a pen and paper, but I didn't do that. I kind of just went off the top of my head, and I thought of the 5 players, and Hysteria was one that I really wanted to put in the top 5, but I personally did not. But I still echo all the points that Wes made. Hysteria start in 2008, throughout of all of Halo 3, his run with triggers down was impressive, especially in 2008. 2008 and 2009, the early years when he was winning those tournaments. I think he's just overall a nasty player. He was nasty not only in Halo 3, but in future Halos as well. And I know this discussion specifically for Halo 3 and Hysteria with the sniper rifle, his decision making. Some people, that there are some downfalls, but not necessarily gameplay downfalls, but people, over the course of Halo's history have definitely pegged Hysteria a little bit to be that complaining or quote unquote being a bad teammate kind of vibe sometimes, but you can't really say that when he's having so much success. So obviously he's doing something right, and he knows when you have your teammates, you kind of know how much you can complain or can't complain with a certain group. And I'm sure he just felt comfortable with his friends that he was able to kind of do that throughout Halo 3. But yeah, man, he's super nasty. Definitely, I don't have much pushback from me for him being 5th, but for me personally, he wasn't on the top 5.
I just want to make one comment. I think 100% Faisal brought up a phenomenal point. I just want to touch on it. Hysteria, I always said I thought Hysteria was the best player in the game. He has the worst attitude in the game, and it held him back. I think he could have been easily the most winning Halo 3 player in the world. And who knows what else he could have done across other titles if he had a better attitude.
Yeah.
He knows I think his attitude is bad, so this is no surprise to him. But it really can hold you back. So let that be a lesson. Like, even the greats, like, all have probably a flaw. Hysteria, like Goofy said, there wasn't a flaw in the gameplay at all. But the attitude did waver at times, and because of it, he only lands us at number 5.
Because you brought up that point, Wes, I want to ask you a quick question, because you were a lot closer to these guys back then than I was. And obviously, guys, when we're talking about our top 5 MLG Halo 3 players, we're obviously talking 2008, 2010. Is the fact that Hysteria was only ever on one franchise with triggers down, is that telling of the fact that there was nowhere else for him to go because no one would have him? Or
anybody would have been blessed to have Hysteria.
I think if anything,
team.
it's a tick in the win column for him that he was able to stay with one team. I think that's something that you should kind of
aspire
encourage.
for.
Yeah, you want to aspire for. So if anything, that's on the good side of his list.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. I didn't know if that had anything to do with it.
One thing Hysteria was loyal too. Hysteria was very loyal to his teammates, and they never really made team changes until it was probably time to make a team change. Like, he stayed with SK for a very long time.
You guys remember that montage where Neighbor he calls Hysteria?
Started on that.
Like,
oh my god!
Let's do it.
No.
You see Neighbor like, dude, we gotta watch that montage on the show sometime.
We do not need to watch that montage for non-gameplay reasons.
If you have not seen this montage, go on YouTube and type in Neighbor and Hysteria Halo 3 dueltage or montage.
It's amazing. It's so
let
good.
us know in the comments what you think about the montage, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna be just ridiculous. I'm gonna be quick. Hysteria for me, Jake knows I got deep love for him. Love him as a player, love him as a dude. I think that real deep. We're both cat dudes, so that's cool. Obviously we connect on that level. But when it comes to Halo 3 players, he was actually very high on my list. I think he was number 2 for me for all time. He was
I respect it.
He was, I mean, some of the stuff he would do on LAN at tournaments, like off stream, off main stage on the side stations, like some of the stuff he would be like, yo, look at this, like what I just did. Some of the freakiest things I've seen people do. I'm talking like no-scoping people across cannon for kill-taculars and stuff like that in a tournament. Like, disgusting talent, disgusting skill. But the other thing that was underrated about him was his objective play. I remember him joking with me last year. He was like, oh, I'm such a good objective player, this and that. And I was like, dude, you're trolling, whatever. He was like, no, like, actually, I'm dead serious. Like, go back and watch it. Look how much objective I did. And you start to notice that this guy really ticked all the boxes in terms of, like, as a gameplay, there was nothing lacking from Hysteria. And I think we saw how nasty and dominant he was in that 2008, 2009. So, yeah, he was, like, my number 2 for sure. So, you guys ready to jump into number 4?
Let's do number 4, man. Let's do it.
All right, number four, Snipe Down. This one is going to be a little controversial. I feel like people are seeing him this early in the list at number 4. Wes, once again, let's dive in with you. Thoughts on Snipe Down, where he was on your list? What do you think about him being number 4?
Snipe Down was probably honorable mentions. Did not make my top 5. Was not a top 5 Halo 3 player.
Wow.
In my opinion.
Wow.
It's obviously he's at number 4, so you guys have to have them both pretty high. This is my personal list. Snipe Down 2010 year was rough, to say the least. So if we want to talk about 2008 and 2009, he had a real good 2008 year, right? National champion, probably best player in the league. Absolutely, hands down, a monster of a force. At unbelievable talent, and for me to leave him out of my top 5 just speaks volume to the respect I have for the guys that are in my top 5. I mean, I had to leave like Hines out of my top 5. Like, I thought Hines personally, I thought Hines was the best player in the game at one point. Like, I voted for him as the most valuable player 2009. Absolutely, I think Rona's up there for sure. I don't want to get stuck too much like bashing the guy, because obviously his resume speaks for himself, and he's been doing this a lot longer than just Halo 3. But for me personally, I don't like his play style. I didn't like his play style back then. I never lost to Snipe Down. Well, I think I lost to Snipe Down once in 08, but like, yeah, he was like really individually talented, but his play style just didn't do it for me. It wasn't efficient enough. He wasn't like, it just wasn't my idea of good Halo 3 wasn't Eric Rona's gameplay. And that's just a personal opinion.
Yes. I agree with the playstyle thing, but I think his dominance is so evident that even despite him not kind of falling into the category, like my idea of what efficient Halo is, but like you said, his resume speaks for itself. So for me, Snipedown was on my top 5 list. I believe he was 3rd or 4th. I have to look at my list. Hold on. Let me look. I should know this, but
I don't even know his name list. How much can we trust this?
He was third. He was third on my list. Snipe Down, like Wes said, the national champion in Halo 3, showed dominance in every single year that the game was on the circuit for MLG.
Not every year.
So 2010, you could argue. I mean, he definitely wasn't winning because we had the Instinct and Final Boss kind of rivalry going on.
2010.
He was on BTH with your boys. He was with Maniac and Demon D, and
they just had an entire year of underperforming.
Yeah, I think they got 3rd place at an event in 2000, and then they
lost their leader
a couple times.
They lost their leader.
Yeah,
I got 3rd in an event in 2010. Am I a top 5 player?
I mean. No,
I think if we had
that was sarcasm.
I think if we had a top 5 leader discussion, then we might be able to throw you in the conversation. I
don't think it's an out there opinion to have Snipe Down the top 5, especially for the MLG Halo 3 days. It's the way he came, and it's not the greatest of all time. It's the best, right? Like the most. The nastiest player, not necessarily the greatest, which is why Ogre 2, we'll go down the list. Maybe he is on here, but for me, Ogre 2, the GOAT, right, wasn't on the list for me because it's just top 5 skilled or top 5 best Halo 3 players. So, but yeah, the way he came on to, the scene in Halo for Halo 3 in 2008, coming on with Triggers Down, then switching over to Straight Rippin' and just having that dynastic run with Straight before, kind of switching boat and trying to land his plant his feet with another roster that he wasn't able to quite do so successfully towards the end of Halo 3. But I think he's just nasty, and for him to be in the top 5 for me is almost a must.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to have Snipe Down in my top 5. He was, I think, my 3rd pick as well, Faisal. So I'm right there with you. I think, Wes, you nail it when you say his 2010 was like abysmal for his standards, right? Like his 2010 for any other player would probably be like
a top 5 all-time list. For a top 5 in the game, yes.
But for me, my counter is that his 2008 rise was so insane, like just ridiculous in terms of like how high his clout was, how high his stock was coming in, and going back and watching some of that old rebrod from 08. I was doing it recently because I was studying the BR. That's a whole nother discussion. But the stuff that he was doing to people at times was just downright disrespectful. Like he was clowning people, running in, going, getting double sticks and getting away with no damage taken, and I would argue that he was his best self prior to kind of realizing who he was, if that makes sense. Like when it still felt like he had something to prove and he was still on his rise up, he was such a dominant force and did so much. But I will agree in the efficiency standpoint, like I don't think he was the most efficient player at times, but like from a raw talent standpoint, like he is a very talented player. He's obviously an all-time great. I don't know. What do you want to say?
I think there's somebody on my list that is obviously not going to be in the top 5, and I'm very curious to see if there's 1 or 2 and how in the hell that person got left out of the top 5. But I mean, if Hysteria made the cut, then the other 4, I'm like,
yeah, I'm excited to move down the list.
But that being said, I think Snipedown was. I'll say this. I'll preface this with Snipedown was one of the greatest. Obviously, he was a force. He was a main slayer for every team he was on. His stats were out of control, I'm sure, for every team he was ever on. Playstyle didn't make the cut, and then I think the media has a lot to do with people's envisionments of how like dominant Snipedown really was. Because there's people like Roy, there's people like Cloud, there's people like Fear itself that were probably doing the exact same thing in a better fashion, in my opinion. And I'm just interested to kind of see how that.
Let's see the list. Move on to number 3, baby. Let's do it.
Number 3.
Random side note about Snipedown really quick before we go on. After he won in 2009, I know he didn't win the national championship or whatever. How long did it take him to climb back to winning an event? When was the next time he won an event after 2009? Do you guys remember?
Didn't win in Reach.
I was gonna say that slump probably lasted a bit. I don't remember him winning in Reach.
Yeah, when they put that
in H2A, yeah.
Do you count Halo 4?
Halo 4, H2A, Halo 5. He was pretty dominant. Yeah.
So that drought lasted a while, man. To go from 2010 all the way through Reach, and then
I'm surprised he wasn't winning in Halo Reach. Honestly,
I'm not.
He's pretty nasty in Reach. I don't know.
Yeah, but like the efficiency West brings it. All right, you guys ready for number 3?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Number 3 is Roy.
Roy number 3
is our boy at number 3. Faisal, what are your thoughts on this, man?
So Roy was number 2 on my list. I think Roy being in the top 5 for the OG Halo 3 pros is a necessity. Like, he's got to be on this list. Throughout the entirety of Halo 3, in Halo 3's 3 years, he was in the pro community, for the audience as well. He was known as having the best BR. Him and his twin brother Lunchbox had great teamwork, great chemistry with any roster they put together.
This isn't a Lunchbox conversation.
Yeah, no, I know. But that obviously them two always teaming together. It's hard to bring up one without giving an honorable mention, because I don't think Lunchbox. Honestly, I think he should be in the top 5 as well. But he didn't make it on my list, and I don't imagine he would be on this list. We'll see. But honorable mention to Lunchbox. But Roy, man, this guy dominated. Especially towards the end of Halo 3 when he was on that Instinct roster. With Elamite, Roy, Lunchbox, and Cloud. So that roster, they won back-to-back tournaments. They were one of the 2 best teams to close out the final year of Halo 3 alongside Final Boss. And man, he was just so dominant. He had so many big moments in tournaments that I could think of, so many clutch plays. His communication is top notch. His teamwork is always talked about. His shot is great. He's pretty much everything you want in a teammate, right? He brings the hype. He can calm you down. He has the experience. He's just an overall great person and a great Halo player. So Roy is definitely our boy. And for him to be on the top 3 all-time Halo 3 list is definitely approved by me.
Wes?
Yeah, Roy comes in at number 3 on my list, and rightfully so. I think Faisal hit the nail on the head. Roy had the best shot in the game for just about all 3 years, it felt like. His impact was always felt when competing against him. He was a heavy influencer and on the map at all times. You knew where Roy was. You knew Roy had just done something disgusting to your teammate. You knew Roy was about to for you if you didn't do something quick to change the outcome of that. That his resume kind of lackluster, which leaves him at 3. Easily, Roy could have been number 1, but he needed to win more, right? Mm-hmm. I think 2 tournaments doesn't cut it. I mean, I won a tournament before Roy did, which is strange to say and kind of break down. Obviously, Roy goes on to win about 20 something. So I'm gonna keep my mouth shut when it comes to that. But gotta respect. I mean, competing against Roy, like I said, he made his presence felt in every game, and I think that was why he landed so high on my list. And he did it with his BR, which I can't say about almost everyone else on my list. Like, yes, Roy could snipe, but Roy could just as easily take over an onslaught game, and you would,
oh my gosh, yeah,
and you would not have a chance. So because of that, and I think his playstyle was an aggressive, efficient playstyle at the same time, which just doubles down on the legend that he was, and the difficulty it was to play against someone like him. So Roy definitely deserving of a spot, and third being it.
And he did it with such class, right? Like, such a class act, someone that would absolutely dominate you in the game and then nothing but love on you outside the game and be such a positive impact. Like, can't be understated. I wanted to actually, like, kind of briefly touch on Lunchbox, because I feel like the big, like, you brought up the media earlier, Wes, you know, when talking about snipe down stuff. I think Lunchbox's biggest problem in all of Halo and the Halo scene was the fact that he was named Lunchbox and not, like, I don't know, Marth or something else. Because, like, his play at times was on the... Okay, you guys didn't play Smash, whatever.
I did.
His play, like, was, like, on the same level for the most part as, you know, Roy. Sometimes he would even have a tournament where he would, you know, exceed his brother. And he was able to do it all. But Roy, for me, the shot is just iconic, right? And so Roy was obviously on my list. I think he was... I think Roy was actually my fifth place, was my number 5. Like, I had my top 4 were like instantly, but then I was thinking about it and I was like, no, like, Roy deserves that spot for sure. And I think that his impact in the game can't be understated. Like you said, like, you knew his presence, and that is so important, especially with the consistency of the shot, the consistency of the decision making. And it just can't be understated how impactful and valuable of a player he is. A question I want to bring up, though, like, Wes, he's your number 3, you know, Faisal, he's up there on the list. Like, if you guys could point out a flaw in Roy's gameplay, what would it be?
I think it would have to be the resume, or the not winning enough until the last year of Halo 3. I think that's the only thing that would, for me, boost him to, like, putting him best player of all time for Halo 3, was the fact that I think he needed to have more victories under his belt throughout the course of the MLG days.
His ability to pick teammates, right? Like, it wasn't the best. He did steal Scotty from me, so that was a good pick. But, like, yeah, I mean, that's got to be part of it. You got to be good at, like, Roy was, like you said, friends with everybody, and I feel like that could have affected some of the team changes and decisions that they made. But I mean, they had great teams. They were always on the cusp of winning, it felt like, with Macchio, with Victory X, with Snipe Down. Fear, when they teamed with Fear Itself and Neighbor, that was my best team to never win. Those guys were actually the best team in the game at the time, in my opinion. But yeah, I think when I wanted to mention also, when you brought up Lunchbox and why he doesn't make the top 5, but Roy does, and they kind of had the same resumes, it's like, the consistency of Roy at all times, Roy's presence is felt on the map. Lunchbox has lapses. Lunchbox would have moments where he just, like, makes the play that wins his team the game, and it's like, yo, Lunchbox is wildin'. And then there's other times where it's like, I didn't really recognize that Lunch was, like, impactful in the game, right? I think as a player, like, that consistency that Roy brought at all times, his impact being felt in the game, was important, and that's, like, where I separate those two. But yeah, I think that if I could say Roy could be better at anything, it's just putting together a God Squad faster than he did in Reach.
So there's no flaws in Roy's game as from Faisal and Clutch. They're saying all of his stuff that he needed to work on was outside of the game. So that's, I love that.
Roy's definitely one of those players who is, like, top tier, right? So it's hard to point out flaws of players like,
I agree.
You know, Stolas and the Roys and the Shotsies. Like, I mean, they're just so good. It's hard to say, oh, they're bad at this, they need to get better. It's like,
they got everything.
It's just a matter of, like, are they on that day of the tournament, or is their team playing well? But at the end of the day, they're top tier.
I think Roy built himself on that consistency. All right, let's jump into number 2. We're getting into the juicy. I mean, I feel like this whole list has been juicy.
Left. Why have certain names not been said?
Yeah.
Yo, if you guys, I'm just saying, if there's a name that has not been said yet, that does not get said,
it's gonna be. Let's go ahead.
Number two.
Let's go. There he is.
You knew. Come on, man.
Oh my God. I got
Come on.
nervous. I'm like, no
Come on,
way,
man.
right?
I think we know who number one is, but at least I hope I think we do. But yeah,
Come
number two.
on,
Okay,
man.
go ahead.
Well, I
Go
mean,
ahead,
you're
Justin.
talking about Scotty, the first player to three-peat in Halo 3, whereas Halo 3 was
Oh,
literally absolute chaos. This game was chaos. Everybody was winning back and forth. No one had any consistency. Scotty comes in and says, here, give me that national championship and 2 more wins after to be the first player to three-peat. The fact that he was just... I can't say enough. Wes, go first, man. You team with
Let's
them.
defer to let's let Wes take.
Let me talk about my duo for a second.
Go for it.
I have one duo in my Halo career that I really thought I had a duo. I had Richie, so he's actually kind of a duo. Scotty, dude, Scotty, man. Scotty would say jump, I'd say how high, because I wanted the opportunity to team with him ever since I became a pro, right? He was on Ambush. I was like, yo, this guy's got it. We used to play online all the time together. I'm like, yo, Scotty might be the best player in the game. Saying that in like 2008, I'm like, I'm about this Cloud guy. Like, dude, the only other person I can ever compare to teaming with Cloud with, the feeling that I have teaming with Cloud was World 2. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that I sit right next to Scotty at a tournament. I do not have to look over at Scotty's screen once and wonder, is he making the right play or is he messing up? I know 100% of the time Scotty is making the right play. He is hitting his shots. He is actually dominating. Just, can I get it together for just a minute to help this man out? And a lot of the times, like, dude, I mean, Scotty gave me a chance. So I was a top 12 kid, and Scotty literally reached out to me and said, I want to build a team, and I want you to be on it. And that was way before, in between 08 and 09. And I was just like enamored with the fact that I got an opportunity. Like, this was my big shot, and I couldn't let Cloud down, right? Because he was taking a wild leap of faith on a lot of his friends and me and Demon and people that hadn't done it before. But Scotty knew something. Scotty knew we could piece it together and have success. He saw a light in me, I guess, at the time that like nobody else really did at the top. So I owe just about everything in my career to Scotty. I wouldn't be on this podcast right now without Scotty. But we need to talk more about Cloud gameplay. Yo, if it's a pit slayer and it's a stalemate, and I got Cloud top my turret with snipe, I don't care who's on the other side. I already know Scotty's going to rip his head off. Like, I already know he's going to open up the map for me. I'm just going to get ready to push street or runway, right? Like, I just got to do my piece of the puzzle. I know Scotty's winning the one-on-one. I always will remember it was at Nats 09. We're playing the Instinct team. We're in game 5. Pit Slayer. It's a stalemate. It's tied game. All of a sudden, like, we're all just standing still watching our lane. Scotty's got snipe. Scotty brains neighbor top their turret. Like, all I hear is one snipe shot go off in the kill feed. Cloud kill neighbor. We're up by 1. I'm like, nice shit, Scotty. And 10 seconds later, neighbor goes back for snipe. Scotty snipes him again. And then I'm like, nice, Scotty. The third time it happens in like it's probably 35 seconds. Scotty out snipes neighbor 3 times, and all of a sudden Scotty just goes, challenge me. Like, after, and I'm sitting there like, yo, I have Jesus Christ on my team. Like, this guy is actually on fire. There's so many stories I have about watching Scotty and seeing him do insane things in Halo 3. The level of consistency, the thing that Scotty always taught me was how to be better. And the level of professionalism that he had about that was insane. I'd be like, Scotty, you got to see this play I made. And I'd like show him in theater and he'd be like, dude, like, you let this guy get you to half shields when you were going for like the triple. Like, you should have like hugged this corner more, and that way like your full shields are like you don't have damage taken, and because of that you're able to do this now. You're able to go for that flag, and if a nade hits you, you don't die. And I'm like, yo, the level that Scotty trained me to think of in Halo was out of this world, and like the guy was just a master when it came to Halo 3. I had there's no confidence I have more in a player in Halo 3 than Cloud.
Yeah, no, I think it's only right that we defer to you for kind of speaking on Cloud, Scotty, because obviously you guys won national championship together. You guys kind of built the reputation that we all know and love for BTH, and y'all kind of started a dynasty in that way. So you pretty much echoed all the statements that I wanted to say about Scotty. Just so committed to perfecting his craft. I got to know Scotty really well as well, and I teamed with him throughout the course of Halo. Even when Halo 3 came back last year, I was playing with Scotty a lot, and we teamed and I actually went to the Red Bull 2v2 tournament with Scotty, and we played in a couple 4v4 tournaments last year as well, too, or one 4v4 tournament on LAN. So I know how amazing Scotty is, and everyone knows back in Halo 3 the dominance that this guy had. So I won't go on too long about it. I think Wesley gave the great point, everything that needed to be said about Scotty. He just such a knack for perfecting his craft. And it's funny that you brought up that story when you're showing him like a sick triple kill or overkill you got, and he's watching it but can't help but say, hey, and it's not even like him being a negative. He's genuinely giving you insight of what he knows could be better about your gameplay, right? So he's just that kind of person. He's not only is he nasty, which he's like nerdy, and he's smart, and he'll hit his shots, and he's a hard kill. But at the same time, he's so adamant about going into theater or finding ways to improve that. And that's what we always talk about when it comes to teams like Sentinels, and we talk about the Lethals and the Roll 2s and the Snake Bites nowadays. You had the Clouds and the Pistolas and the Roys back then, the guys that were not only were they at the top of the top, but they wanted it more than anyone else who's at the bottom too. So that's just, in my opinion, for everyone watching, if you want to be talking specifically about a Halo, if you want to be at the top, you got to just, even when you're finding success, you got to go even harder to continue it. And Scotty was definitely a reflection of that.
Yeah, Scotty was very high on all three of our lists. I think that says a lot about him. And, I'm jealous I didn't get to have the pleasure of playing with him, next to him like you did, Wes, but I had, I guess the privilege of playing against him, on LAN and feeling that wrath. And there's always something to me about like the silent killers, like even in sports, like, the Damian Lillards, the guys who are like soft-spoken, but are just like the Kawhi Leonards are just killing you, absolutely destroying you, and doing it like silently without saying a word. Like, and then the fact you said he had that outburst after sniping Neighbor 3 times, I'm like, man, that's horrifying.
He'll have some of those where he'll
I know.
It's few and far between, but when it happens, like as a teammate, you just get goosebumps and you're like, yo, like Scotty's on. And when Scotty's on, the sky is the limit. So,
and that energy hits everyone, right? When someone like that pops on your team, I love that feeling. And dude, that story is so sick, out sniping Neighbor, who most people considered was like, a top 3 sniper in Halo 3, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and just doing it with such ease. Incredible player. And I love that you touched on the fact that you teamed with him and Royal too. That was going to be my question to you, was going to be like, what was it like, team with both of them? And I think you obviously have been blessed to do that.
It was more of, with Scotty, it was more of, I was like he was the teacher, and I was more of like trying to just soak in everything I can from this guy. And then it got to a level of like where Scotty and I were on the same page about a lot of stuff, especially when we teamed in Reach. The times we teamed in Reach, and we were vibing then, and like we saw the game the same way. We thought about situations the same way. With Royal 2, I kind of like Royal 2 was a rough piece of work when I first teamed with him, right? I mean, like, don't get me wrong, the guy was absolutely insane when it came to like individual skill, but he had a lot to learn. And I don't necessarily agree with everything that Royal 2 does, but I mean, at this point, I can't really talk about it because he'll just tell me to shut up. And
speaking of Cloud, actually, like not even like 3-4 days ago, he was in my stream and he was chatting, and we were just catching up, and I just casually threw it out there, like he brought up that, yo, I'm really enjoying the podcast on my X show. You guys are doing a great job. It's entertaining, and just for fun, because it's just so awesome to talk to him again. I was like, man, we need to get you on the show sometime, do an interview or something. And he's, not to speak for him, and we'll have to see if it'll work out, but maybe one of these shows we could start bringing in some players, and Scotty and Cloud would be high on that list. I would love to have him on, and even everyone in the comment section, let us know, what players, obviously we'll try our best to see who we can get, to bring on the show, but let us know who you want us to talk to possibly on the show, who you want to hear from as far as players in the community. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. That's Scotty was in the chat. And
So
I think
awesome.
he'll be talking about it.
We love Scotty. So I have one last question, Wes, before we jump into our number one pick about that whole situation. Like you said, you guys built that BTA squad, and then we saw what happened. 09 Nats happened. You guys win the championship, shocked the whole world. My question then is, you guys are at the top of the mountain. What kind of broke that squad up? How did that kind of fall apart?
Yeah, I don't know how much public knowledge is out there, or like what you guys know of the situation, but when we were on BTH, our team did not get along at all. It was a majority of the time it was Danny and I that had a lot of issues, but we were basically kids back then, and a lot of us were responsible for doing some immature stuff and not taking it as serious as we should, it wasn't as professional as we wanted it to be. So going into the tournament, it's actually a wild story. I guess I'll tell it here. Scotty had actually pulled me aside before the tournament, and was like, "Hey, after the tournament, I don't know what's going to happen with our team, but I know I want to stick with you." And I said, "All right, sounds good. I got cloud." At that point, I kind of got it. We didn't get along as great as teammates should, and because of that, this is probably the last rodeo for us. But at the same time, I really think that helped us, right? I think that because Danny and I didn't get along, or because Nick and Danny featured themselves as a duo, and they wanted to kind of separate themselves from Scotty and I at times, but at times they would include Scotty because Scotty was the best player in the game. And it was we all wanted to outperform each other. As selfish in a team game as that sounds, it's I know I went into Nats 09 saying yo, I don't know what we're about to do with this tournament. I know we're capable of winning, but I want to play my best. And I want to shut Danny up. I want to play better than everyone on my team. I want to step up, and I want to just go off. And I really think our team excelled through it. And come post tournament, it was good vibes, and we obviously knew we had a ceiling that we could beat anybody. We had beaten every team that we beat that year in one weekend. We had already beaten Straight Rippin', we had already beaten Triggers Down at one point, we had already beaten Instinct. Nothing was a surprise to us, and we had done it on LAN. But I did get a phone call probably a month later. We hadn't really talked. It was kind of the off season. We were kind of chilling. We were playing online, 2s, 3s, whatever it might be. And I got a call from Scotty, and I remember him telling me, he's like, "Dude," I'm like, "What's up, man?" He's like, "Roy and Lunch asked the team, and they want Elamite to be the 4th. He's like, I tried to get you, but it's they have the Old Spice sponsor that's an automatic $20K in the bank. I don't even have to compete in it." I'm not going to get into Scotty's personal life, but no one's turning down 20 grand, right? Mm-hmm. And especially back then when BTH, we paid for our plane tickets and our fucking hotel to every event we went to. So anyways, it was a perfect, and he gets the opportunity to team with Roy, Lunch, and Elamite. I couldn't tell him couldn't do it, or couldn't even feel bad at the time. I'm like, "Dude, great opportunity for you to go and probably win tournaments," and that's exactly what he did. We ended up teaming and Reach and having some success there too. So he was always my 2s partner. Whenever we would play in Tots' basement, we hustled. I made so much money then. Was my 2s partner in the Reach tournament that we got an unfortunate second place in. That's a different story. But to me, Scotty is always going to be my duo, like I said, and I couldn't speak enough about how great he was, and not only Halo 3, but as a Halo player in general.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like he had to make some life moves, which we all understand, and sometimes you got to make that thing happen. In an alternate universe somewhere, Wes and Scotty together went to Instinct and won a bunch more tournaments, so hopefully that makes you feel better.
I'm not going to say that. I always did used to joke. I just tell them, just drop Elamite. But obviously, look at Elamite.
Yeah.
His resume speaks for himself, too, so.
All right, boys. Well, we gave Scotty a bunch of love. Number one was unanimous across every single list. There was no debating it. It is I Got Your Pistola. Faisal.
Yeah. Come on. So number one on this list, when we were going over, making the top 5, that was the one that automatically, instantly, I said Pistola is got to be number 1 on that list because as great and legendaries when it comes to the status of players like Cloud, Hysteria, Snipe Down, these guys were, Pistola was in a tier of his own, I guess. He was nicknamed the Wizard for a reason. This kid was the most, he made playing against Pistola was so uncomfortable. Like every time he was on the other team, he would just be doing whatever he wanted. His movement, and he was pretty much like the Shotzzy before Shotzzy in a way, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Pistola just did it first, and he did it with such style. I could, every time I think of it, I could just imagine like Puckett's head, Puckett's voice in my head, commentating and going crazy over something Pistola is doing on the main stage. Obviously the success in terms of tournament placings he had speaks for itself. He was on that final boss roster with Ogre 2, Victory X, and Fear Itself. Honorable mention to Fear Itself. He was on my top 5 list personally and didn't make the cut, but
it was 5th on mine.
Okay. So 100 didn't do it, but
it wasn't me.
Yeah. So that final boss team was insane. They were so talented, and I think Pistola really was kind of like the core and the heart of that team, and what made them so unique and special. And even now, man, it's Halo 5. It's 10 years later, and he's still on probably one of the best teams in the game going into Halo Infinite or future Halo. So I know this list is just about Halo 3, but I can't help but mention how amazing, and even in the Halo 4 the global championship runner-up to Ace, he got 2nd place. He went on Halo Reach, Halo 2 Anniversary, Halo 5. Like, he's just constantly just being amazing. But going back to Halo 3 and MLG Halo 3 days, starting off his run with Triggers Down, with teaming with the guys like SK and Hysteria back in 2008, early Halo 3 days. He was just so successful. That duo with Hysteria was nasty to start off Halo 3, and then to cap off the year. What was that?
The duo with Hines.
Yeah, the duo with Hines.
Ambush.
Yeah, Hines and Pistola. Yeah, you're right. They came from Ambush. You're very right about that. But then ending off his Halo 3 MLG days with Final Boss, just so. It's like a text, it's like a storybook. He did it. He hit all the check marks along the way. He won multiple player voted MVPs, multiple player voted awards. And I think it's unanimous for a reason. Pistola is a beast, was a beast in Halo 3 and continues to be a beast today. And it only makes sense that he was number 1 on this list.
Yeah, I think for him to land at number 1 on all of our lists just says enough. Playing against him was terrible. I think he was the only top professional to play on 5 cents, if I got that right. Maybe Nated, but the only successful, I would say, or really successful player to play on a cents over 3 or 4 was Pistola. His screen was different than everyone else's. Because of it, he was able to do more and actually look around and impact the game faster than everybody, and that's what his screen looked like at times. His journey throughout Halo 3 was incredible. For him to be on Ambush early on and to watch them have that young gun run with Cloud, Hines, and Pistola before they were ever any
that's like the OKC Thunder before.
Yeah, exactly. They beat FB. They beat FB, I think, in that.
They beat
Crazy.
A ton of teams that year, and created a ton of upsets. They were a fun 2008 team to watch out for. Then Hines and Pistola go to Triggers Down. All of a sudden, they're who they were throughout their 2009 teams, and then finds his way on the Final Boss. I mean, you couldn't have wrote a better story for someone to come up in the 4v4 lands like Pistola did in Halo 3, and to end it on the punctuation of a national championship and being the MVP probably on that team. I mean, hats off to the guy. He's got the belt, in my opinion, and will forever have that engraved in my mind as the number 1 player.
Yeah, I think when you look at someone like Pistola, and I think Shotzzy reminds me of this a lot. When you look at Pistola, you can tell that he just thinks about the game different. He just views his lens. I would love to just be in his brain for an hour and just see the lens that he views Halo through, because nothing to him was set in stone. And what I mean by that was if you saw an opening, let's say we're playing Heretic, for example, if you saw an opening, Pistola was not afraid to sneak through bottom mid, get under your base, and then be flanking you, shooting you in the back, doing all kinds of stuff and living. Whereas like that was like off limits, right? People are like, oh, you don't go bottom mid on that map. You don't do this or you don't do that. Pistola was like, no, I'm going to use my timing and use my awareness of what's happening to use whatever you give me. If you give me any lane, I'm taking it and I'm going to do the maximum with it. I remember watching him, like you talked about the 5 cents, like I remember watching him in a Heretic game jump up to P3 and like on his way to the other side, he like puts a shot in each person that his teammates are fighting like around the map. He's like just helping every single person on his way before he even gets down, and he keeps going, you know, like just ridiculous talent, just ridiculous brain the way he views the game. Fun story about like Pistola. I remember, so his gamer tag before his Pistola in Halo 2 was it was like Chief Fire something, like with a bunch of letters. And I remember we used to always game together. We were kind of in the similar circles. We'd play a lot of free-for-alls in Halo 2. And I remember I went on summer break one summer and I came back. I hadn't played at all. I came back, and by the time I got back, like we're talking like a 2-month period, by the time I came back, no one could beat Pistola in a single free-for-all period. Like that's how much he was able to expand his game in just a 2-month period. And then you see him jump into Halo 3, you know, 2008, I believe, was it San Diego or Orlando with that ambush squad? I remember my friends coming up to me. It was San Diego, right? And I remember my friends running up to me like,
behind them when they won that series.
My friends run up to me and they're like, dude, final boss is about to lose. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's early on. Like, what do you mean final boss is about to lose? I run over there and it's like Pistola and gang going to work and seeing him literally just playing with them. Like, it wasn't even looking like it was this or that. It was absolute dominance showcased right there and then. And I think anyone with a brain could see that. I'm sure SK and you know, Hysteria, whoever saw that and knew like, hey, we got to make some things happen. People move mountains to get him on their team. And then once they got him on their team, they didn't want to let him go. And so he started Halo 3 so strong, knocking off Titans, and he closed out Halo 3 with FB strong, right? And so there was no question in my mind about who the best Halo 3 player of all time is. And he just, I mean, dude, he just stands out in your brain, dude. When you think back on iconic Halo 3 moments, so many of them are Ola just doing something ridiculous, you know? So,
definitely.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, what a great time. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but this is a lot of fun going through the top 5. I want to really quick, just let's just shout out like 2 or 3 honorable mentions. I can go first. I got to obviously give a quick shout out to Elamite. He won the most Halo 3 tournaments out of anyone that played. Most people don't know that. So I feel like for my honorable mention, I'll go ahead and throw Kyle in there. You knew how to win. You knew how to put together the squads, bro. Sorry you didn't make the list, but you know, still got to give you a little shout out. Go ahead, Wes.
Names that aren't on here that would love to see or belong in like the top 10 region. It's going to be Heinz, Ogre 2, Elamite, and Lunchbox, I think, are names that stick out to me. Fear itself somehow didn't make the list. Also, I mean, we already touched on that. Those guys are probably going to round out the top 10 in my head when I think of greatest of all time in Halo 3. All of them could have had an argument at some point to be top 5 players. I mean, Heinz was voted the number 1 player at the end of 09 by the players. So just to give a little light on how like hard it is to make this list and how many people only 5 can make the list, but how many people like deserve to be in the conversation. There's just a little light to that. So big shout out to all those guys. It was a pleasure to compete against them, and man, did they make my life hell at times.
Definitely. I think for me, the honorable mentions have to be Fear itself. I think arguably he was one of, if not the best players to close out Halo 3. And that says a lot, because when Halo 3 at the end of 2010, we talked about it in our previous shows, when a game goes that long, 3 years into its life, it's played at such a high level, right? So for a player to be, at the top when the game is played at such a high level, I think that holds a lot of weight. And Fear itself was, like I said, arguably one of, if not the best player to close out Halo 3. So he definitely has an honorable mention for me, along with Ogre 2. It's hard for me not to put him, somewhere in the discussion, just because, for legacy reasons, I believe so. But he obviously played a big part in Final Boss's success to close out the game, and obviously, like you said, Elamite Warrior having the most total event wins in those 3 years definitely has a lot of weight to it as well. So those are some of my honorable mentions.
Yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of great names. I think doing a top 10 would have been a little too easy. So I think doing the top 5 made it hard. You know, you think so?
Would be hard. Yeah, I mean, any sort of list, because then you start thinking about those 9 and 10 spots, right? Like, I feel like those last few spots on any sort of list when it comes to like this, for me, is always tough because I don't know who I could leave off.
Yeah. This was hard. I mean, I know, you know, Wes is a little bugged that Hysteria made the list in the number 5 spot and not Fear Itself, who was obviously well deserving as well. But you know,
Hysteria was my number 4.
Was he? Oh, okay, never mind then. Okay, we're all good. Yeah. Well, that'll do it for. Yeah, go ahead, Faisal.
That's gonna round off the episode, guys. The longest. Well, it seems like they keep getting longer.
Yeah.
Show after show. This one's going on about 1 hour and 15 minutes now. But thank you to everyone who stuck around. If you did stick around for this long, we really appreciate it. Like we've said time and time again, at the end of the day, we're doing this as a way to connect with you guys every week. You know, connect with the Halo community, hear what you guys have to say, and kind of pick y'all's brains as well as far as topics for the show. So please let us know in the description or in the comment section, I should say, you know, what you want to see, some questions you may have. But for us here at On My X, that's going to do it for episode 5. You can find me streaming at Twitch every single day at twitch.tv/goofy. And my Twitter is goofy with 2G. So it's G Goofy. But I'm going to pass it on over to Hunter JJX. Go ahead and give the people your socials and where they can find you.
Yeah, obviously you can find me Twitter Hunter_JJX, as well as twitch.tv/Hunter_JJX. Just like Faisal, we stream every single day. Be sure to join the Goof Troops, support the channels. Thank you guys so much for checking out episode 5, man. We've seen so many people just locked in and enjoying the show with us, so we love that, and thank you guys for watching. Be sure to let us know in the comments as well who your top 5 are. Wes, why don't you take us out of here? Where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really care if you follow me on social media. If you find me, you can go looking for me. You'll find me, I'm sure. But what I did want to say is something that Faisal mentioned on earlier in the show. If you guys want to see somebody specifically interviewed on the show or get a little, get their opinions on some questions and whatnot, we're looking to potentially add some special guests. I want to see
up a little bit.
Yeah, I want to see if you guys would have any preferences on who we can get in the show. Chances are we can get just about anybody you want. So, that being said, we're going to wrap this up. Episode 5 on the back end, guys. Hope you had a good listen.
This is On My X. Peace.